Hello, everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the deepest personal development concepts in everything, in every context, and that is separating the person from the performer. So this is taken directly out of chapter 2, this concept of my book that is now out, Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? You can grab it. We'll put the link somewhere here, wherever this video is. You can go to coachshaunsmith.com/daddy and go to the page. And I'm in like an emotionally open and vulnerable place right now, which is great as it relates to this book, because I'm just now finishing the first round of editing of the audiobook. And so I just listened to the very end of the final module where I complete the book. And there's this moment where I just said, I just finished my book, right? I just finished reading the book. And it was super cool. And then right before that, I had read all the acknowledgments, to family and friends. And the final acknowledgement was to myself. And so I was a wreck when I was reading it. And I was a wreck when I was listening to it again. And these audios are something that we're offering to anybody that gets the book. If you want to get it, you can send me an email with the receipt of the book, and I'll send you the access to these audios. They're not fully edited into the final audiobook form, which is kind of cool because you hear a lot of the behind the scenes discussions. And I read it with a live audience, online. And that added so much richness to it because they were asking me questions about what I wrote and saying, you should add this piece to it. So the audios are much bigger conversation actually than just the book itself. So anyway, all of that is available to you if you want to grab the book. This concept, separating the person from the performance, is so incredibly deep. It's a massive conversation because it's a very rooted programming for all of us. I think society teaches us that our person and our performer are linked together. What I mean by that is our value as a person is determined by our value as a performer. And there's all kinds of reasons that I think that programming exists, societal reasons, industrialism reasons, and all that stuff. I don't want to go into that now. But virtually all of us have been programmed in our families, by our cultures, by religion, by schools, by leaders, by media, by movies, books, virtually everywhere. We've been programmed explicitly or implicitly that in order to feel better about ourselves, we need to perform better. And I think that's usually because society accepts us when we perform better. Society celebrates performance more than just the person. And so what most of us have been programmed by is a conditional value. Our self-esteem is conditional upon our performance value. And so if we are performing really well, then we should feel good about ourselves because society is going to like us. People are going to accept us. People are going to want to be around us. But then the opposite is also true. Then if we're not performing well, then we shouldn't feel good about ourselves. And then, of course, we all want to feel good about ourselves. So the idea is if I want to feel better about myself, I need to perform better. And that's actually the root of perfectionism. Once upon a time, none of us were perfectionists because this programming hadn't taken hold yet. But then once we learn that in order to increase the way we feel about ourselves, all we need to do is increase our performance, then everybody will love us and drown us with adoration and celebration. So then we want to get really good in our performance. And it makes sense, doesn't it? That if I perform perfectly, then society will love me. My friends and family will love me. Nobody will abandon me. And I get to feel good about myself. But any of you that have fallen, well, let me say it a different way. Any of you that have followed that pattern, you've probably recognized that higher levels of performance actually don't increase your feeling of value, like true feeling of value. Yeah, it might increase the way people respond to you, but that doesn't increase how you truly feel about yourself. And that's one of the reasons why people can perform really well or achieve super high levels and be devastated inside or feel shallow. Just today, this is very timely. Just today, a celebrity named Twitch um, committed suicide, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't know when it actually happened, but like I've seen so many posts on social media and people just don't understand it. And I'm not here to try to pass judgment or be dismissive or demeaning in any way whatsoever. I don't know this man, so I don't know his circumstances, but we see very successful people commit suicide quite often, or we see very successful people be depressed inside. And that's because rising to a level of success doesn't actually mean that we're going to feel fulfilled. And it's because I think of this program that I'm speaking to that we need to separate. We need to separate our value as a performance and our value as a person. When we don't, when those two things are linked, then our performance has too much at stake. Meaning, if we perform really well, then we think we're going to feel really good. But then the opposite means if we fail, then we're going to feel really bad. And none of us want to feel really bad. So we don't want to fail. And since we don't want to fail, it means we resist taking action. We resist trying until we know that we won't fail, because failure is emotionally devastating to most of us. But failure is only emotionally devastating if person and performance are married together. If your value as a person is not determined by your value as a performer, then your self-esteem as a person will stay where it is if you fail. And it also stays where it is if you succeed. And that's really powerful because now you're stable internally. I think we have this false belief, this false assumption that self-esteem is a variable. Self-esteem is not a variable. Your self-esteem, defined by your value as a person, does not increase with your performance, nor does it decrease with your failure. In fact, it doesn't increase or decrease at all. Your value as a person stays the same. But the reason that we feel like we have low self-esteem, which by itself is a misnomer, that phrase actually is false. Your self-esteem, there's no such thing as low self-esteem or high self-esteem. What there is low access or high access to your self-esteem. Let me give you an example. Let's say right in front of you is this gigantic elephant, right? And as you're standing next to the elephant, it's, a full-size adult. It's huge. You can see the details of the skin. Maybe you can smell the animal. You can hear the sounds that it's making, and it's very big because you're right up against it, right? You can reach out and maybe touch it. And now let's say I move you back to where you're 100 yards away from the elephant. No longer is it as big as it was in your perception because you're further away. Your perspective has changed the illusion of size. The elephant hasn't changed, but the illusion of its size has changed just because you're now further away, and you probably can't smell the elephant anymore, and you probably can't see any of the details anymore. And you might not even be able to hear the sounds that it's making, especially the quieter ones, right? And now if we move you even further back, you're 1,000 yards away, you're 2,000 yards away. At a certain point, the elephant is tiny. The elephant hasn't changed, but the distance between you and the elephant has changed. And that's why it looks like the elephant is now smaller. But that is not a small elephant. Just like your self-esteem isn't lower, you're just too far away from it. So if you imagine that your self-esteem is a finite 100% level, then the question is, how close are you to it? And when we can separate the connection, the attachment between our value as a person and our value as a performer, we're going to get closer to our experience of and our access of our self-esteem. Now, this is not a switch. It'd be fantastic if it was just a switch. It was like, oh yeah, I heard this concept and now I'm just going to flip a switch and now I'm going to be right up against the elephant, right? Right up against my self-esteem. That's fantastic. And that's not how it works, because we've been removed from proximity to our self-esteem over years and years and years and years and years of programming. So it's not going to be just an immediate shift. It doesn't have to take as long as it took for us to be distanced from it, but it's not going to be an immediate shift. At least I've never seen that happen. So it's a long journey, but it's a journey that's worth it, because once you reclaim proximity to your self-esteem and you reclaim access to it, then performance is neither the elation that it is when our self-esteem is attached to it in a very unstable way. Like we can feel too good about ourselves if we're performing well. That's not a healthy elation. That's not a healthy ascension. But it also won't be devastating if our performance is low. So our self-esteem is going to be stable. And here's the cool thing. When your self-esteem is no longer at risk, then action is no longer scary. Attempting to perform is no longer scary. So that means you're not going to be as afraid of failure, whether it's on a phone call, trying to get a coaching client, or trying to make money. It's on a sales call, or it's on stage speaking in front of people, or it's asking somebody out on a date. No matter what context it is, when your self-esteem is no longer at risk, then the risk of attempt, the risk of trying, is no longer as intense. And what does that mean? That means you'll give yourself permission to try more, but also you won't have the physical or emotional or mental pressure that so many of us have when our self-esteem is on the table. And when you depressurize yourself, your performance will increase. That's the beautiful part of it. So this is not an attempt to settle into lower performances. This is an attempt to remove the pressure that actually decreases our ability to perform so that we can perform better. And what you'll find is that when you perform more and more and more, when the value of your performance gets higher, you start making more money, you start creating whatever the success is and the goals and the dreams that you're chasing, it won't affect you. Like, you won't get inebriated. You won't be intoxicated, right? Because when you get intoxicated, that means you're going to sober up. You can still stay sober emotionally and succeed. The success won't create an emotional intoxication, nor do you need to be emotionally intoxicated to succeed. And that kind of success sobriety is massively healthy because it's stable and it's controllable and you can count on it. The other connection between person and performance is everything but that. It's unstable. It's unstable. It's temporary, not long lasting. And it's scary. So this concept of separating your value as a person from your value as a performer is probably the most liberating thing you'll ever do for your permission to take action, your permission to take risks, your permission to fall, and your permission to fly. It's all inside this concept. So I'm going to end this discussion here. There's tons more to talk about, but for the sake of this video and brevity, we're going to end it there. As I said, if you do want to grab the book, you can go to coachseansmith.com/daddy. Keep commenting on anything that landed for you. Ask any questions, and we'll continue this conversation in future videos. Take care, everyone. If you like this video, check out the next video in this series where I continue to share various chapters and break down some of the most important concepts from my new book, Daddy, Are You Proud of Me? What Daughters Need to Hear, See, and Know from Their Dads to Have High Self-Esteem and Confidence. I think it's critical that we as fathers show our daughters the essence of what respect is and not just